across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
There you are, the weekend starts here. Good evening and welcome to the Political Asylum right here on Talk. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan and I will be with you all the way to 10 o'clock. Stand by for 3 enthralling hours of news, views and dynamic debate. Get on the show, get on the phone and call me on 0344 499 1000 or you can WhatsApp voice note me on the same number and I promise to play your message out. That's 0344 499 1000. It is Friday, July the 11th. Here's what's coming up. As we laugh like drains and scream with frustration and fury at the sheer absurdity of stupid Starmer's ludicrous swap the migrant scheme non-starter, could it be more? It could be that more than 1,000 more illegal channel crossers pitched up from France since yesterday. Official Home Office statistics confirm that while gormless globalists, two-tier and pipsqueak President Emmanuel Macron were hugging each other and announcing the most ridiculous agreement in political history, 573 migrants crossed the channel illegally, and it looks as if just as many, if not more, have completed the voyage today. Honestly, folks, this guy Starmer, he's a catastrophe. All you can do is laugh about his hopelessness. If you didn't laugh, you'd cry. Seriously, though, what are we going to do about our preposterous Prime Minister? He's an utter joke. 0344 499 1000. Meanwhile, that little man Macron feasts on Britain's £300,000 lavish banquet amid his grotesquely extravagant 3-day state visit and then tells the people of this country we were conned by Brexit lies. I want to say something unbroadcastable on a family show, but I can't, so I'll abbreviate. F him. Your thoughts on this pint-sized weirdo who thinks we're all suckers who fell for Brexiteer fibs. 0344 499 1000. In other news, 2 women who called 47-year-old Macron's 72-year-old wife Brigitte a man have been cleared of defamation at a French appeal court. So, in France, it's now fine to say that the First Lady is a bloke. She's devastated. What a shame. 0344 499 1000. Also tonight, more good news for Nigel Farage as a new poll reveals that Reform supporters would switch to Labour if Keir could solve the migrant crisis. Like that's going to happen. 0344 499 1000. Plus, oh, the delicious irony as former union firebrand Angela Rayner is kicked out of the Unite Union because now she's part of the government urging strikers to accept a deal offered by Birmingham Council, which bin workers have dismissed as insulting. Now, Unite, the biggest union in the country, are considering their relationship with Labour. That's a quote. And whether to continue their £1.2 million a year donations. The worm is turning, folks. 0344 499 1000. Also, alarming signs that the rape gang scandal is not only still going on, but getting worse. And finally, sick note Britain. After they signed off, wait for it, 11.5 million so-called fit notes. No, why do you call them fit notes? These euphemisms are driving me nuts. Bit like irregular migration, isn't it? Anyway, after doctors signed off 11.5 million so-called fit notes last year, GPs are being urged to get tougher and stop the UK being the easiest place in the world to get money without earning it. And don't get me started on this once industrious nation's addiction to welfare and the benefits bills that sending bankrupt Britain to hell in a handcart. 0344 499 1000. All that and so much more. So don't go anywhere. Stick with me right here, right now on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. Let's spend Friday night together. And with me, as always, on a Friday night is my Friday friend, hot foot from Milan, where he's been walking the catwalk because he's certainly the most stylish man I've ever met. It's political strategist Pete Barnes. How you doing, Pete?
Hi, Kev. How's it going?
You don't feel like a scarecrow anymore.
No,
now
I
you've left
don't.
Milan.
I tell you now, I've eaten so much pasta and so much cake. I don't even know how I'm stood up. My God, they say date a chef. Don't. Oh, my Lord.
I love Milan, but when I go there, you look around, I mean, it's like the street sweepers.
Everything
the
is
street cleaners are dressed better than you are.
Everything is out of a movie. It is ridiculous. It is a beautiful place to go, and if you ever get the chance, do go. But one, don't go in a heat wave if you're from the north of England.
Yeah. But anyway, you must be glad to get out of the heat of Italy to come back here.
Well,
oh, no, wait a minute.
I left the country for like less than a week, and look what you all did.
Yeah, it's 1,000,000 degrees today, probably around the country, but certainly here in London. Well, it's not only hot in London, it's sweltering. And if Londoners will appreciate this, don't go down on the tube system today. I've been down there twice, and it's difficult to survive. It's like a sauna down there. Fred Fackness, the temperatures on the London tube system, the underground system, in the summer reach such heights that they are temperatures at which it would be illegal to transport animals.
Yes. Yeah, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. There are saunas that are cooler than that.
So officially, Sadiq Khan treats us like animals.
Well, I will say, I've done a lot of travelling today, and the worst bit of it has been the transport for London. And honestly, I thought I was going to have a little bit of trouble trying to get here on time, but the most stressful bit was getting from my flat to here on time. Not getting from a different country, it was getting just across London. Honestly. I give up.
Well, anyway, I'm glad you made it. So let's talk. Well, obviously, we feasted on this ludicrous one in, one out, swap the migrant, swap the foreigner deal. It's a joke. It's a joke in so many ways. We kind of covered the ludicrous nature of it, the way that it cannot work because of so many factors. Maybe we'll cover a few of those in a moment. But to sort of take a newer angle, let's talk about this guy, Macron, who comes over here for a 3-day state visit that, frankly, we find baffling. And guess what? He then turns around. The feast at Windsor Castle the other night cost £300,000. The whole bill for this 3-day state visit with him and his possibly female wife, Brigitte, was about £5 million. And then he turns around to us and essentially says, you Brits, you're idiots because you fell for Brexit lies. As I said, I really want to say something about this guy, but I can't on a show like this. But I'm furious about that. How dare he come over here and abuse our generosity by turning around and telling the people of this country, of this great country, that we're idiots.
Yeah, it's disgusting, but also it just happens to not be true. This has nothing to do with Brexit. You know, you can say, we pulled out of certain agreements. But it's nothing to do with it, because this problem was actually beginning long before Brexit was even a word, let alone a concept. It actually goes all the way back to things like the Customs Union and the European Union itself, keeping countries in place so we could have nice little trade deals between ourselves and keeping these countries down economically underdeveloped. That's what started this. It's people like Macron, it's his kind that, really put the fuel to this crisis, and now they're all saying, it's everybody else's fault. It's just a barefaced lie. But one thing I have enjoyed is the mayor of Calais coming out and scolding Macron like you've never seen. Basically come out and said, you are just pulling everybody's leg here. And they basically just torn him apart and just said, what you're saying is a lie, and also you've done nothing for the people of France either. This deal is a laughing stock.
Well, of course it's a laughing stock, but as I say, while these two gormless globalist fools were preening themselves at this joke of a press conference last night, 573 migrants were busy coming across the channel just to prove what a stupid arrangement they've come to that isn't going to work. They think, as I said in my monologue, just as many came across today. Doubtless these migrants are laughing at the absurdity of this one in, one out agreement that will never happen. Now, Nigel Farage was out in the Channel yesterday monitoring this. Here's what he had to say.
And it's the usual drill. A dinghy has left the French beaches, been escorted over by the French Navy, and if we turn around, we can see the Border Force vessel, and he's now waiting on the 12-mile line for the handover. Bear in mind, we've given the French 800 million quid since 2014, and still their Navy hands over migrant boats. Looks to be about 70 people in the boat. It's lying very low in the water. We've looked through the binoculars. The French Navy have now stopped, and this boat is right on the edge of French and British waters, and Border Force are waiting just behind me. It's interesting. We're literally watching one government politely handing over to another government. 78 people on that rib, one woman, 3 kids, and 74 young adult males whose identity we do not know. If this is not a national security emergency, I don't know what is.
Well, Nigel, I've got to pick you up there. I was watching Question Time 2 weeks ago, and I have to tell you that the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, announced to the British people as a fact that the vast majority of these migrants who are coming across in small boats and dinghies are women and children. He was lying. He was lying. He lied to us like his Prime Minister lies to us. Let's also remind ourselves of this nonsensical fiasco of a press conference last night as these two fools, Starmer and Macron, announced the deal that would never happen, a deal that Keir Starmer said was groundbreaking. Check it out.
So I'm pleased to announce our agreement today on a groundbreaking returns pilot. For the very first time, migrants arriving via small boat will be detained and returned to France in short order. In exchange for every return, a different individual will be allowed to come here via a safe route, controlled and legal, subject to strict security checks, and only open to those who have not tried to enter the UK illegally.
Oh, shut up, you ridiculous little man. It's just absurd. You know, so we were, of course, dealing with this last night because when we came on air, this press conference had just happened and we were just digesting the extraordinary details
the word extraordinary.
of this deranged deal. I'm sure this has all occurred to you, but here are just to reiterate, here are the problems. First of all, he was asked, by the way, Pete, at this press conference, the political lobby, as usual, were firing on about one cylinder, not asking the right questions, but they did ask one question of him. So you're saying that 1 in every 17 migrants who come across the Channel to Britain will be sent back to Britain. He was asked, quite germanely, how are you going to choose that one migrant? And what did he say? I'm not going to go into those details now. In other words, he doesn't know.
He doesn't know. He has no idea.
Here's what will happen if they even try this. The money-grabbing immigration lawyers will be all over that like a second skin. There's no way any lawyer worth his money will ever let anyone go back on that basis because they're going to say, hang on, you've got 17 migrants and you chose my client. Why? That's not fair. Any court will uphold that. So I bet Andrea Jenkins last night on air 10 quid that we will not send. I should have made it 1,000.
I was going to say, I
should have made it 1,000 or 1,000,000 because she's rich. That we will never send a single migrant back. So there's that. Now the other thing is when we do send we never will, but let's just pretend. Yeah, for the sake of argument, put the case that we do manage to get a single migrant back to France. Then what happens to him? I'm going to say him because let's be real. As we've just 90% of them are blokes anyway. So when he goes back to France, what happens to him? I'll tell you. I said last night. I'll tell you what happens to him. He does a U-turn, heads back to Calais, gets on the first dinghy to Dover. So that's ridiculous. And then let's talk about the deterrent element. This is supposed to be a deterrent. So idea being, if the migrants coming to Britain see that there's a chance they could go to France, I'm thinking, I almost said Rwanda then they'll think, oh, it's not worth the risk. Well, because they're talking about 50 migrants a week, 2,600 a year, that means they've got a 20-to-1 on chance of winning, of staying. So that is worth rolling the dice. That is not a deterrent. And by the way, when you take on board 2,600 migrants to go back to France in a year, allegedly, you know, it won't happen, but just suppose they do that. Conveniently, if you like, last week, how many migrants came across the channel? 2,599. In other words, pretty much the amount of migrants that Starmer is fixing to send back to France in a year came over last week. It's ridiculous.
Again, it is the fact that he gets up there and he just feels like he can just barefaced lie to people. That is the staggering bit of it, because we said as soon as this kind of cropped up, both of us said never going to happen, not even worth the paper that it's written on.
No chance whatsoever.
I was telling you, I spoke to a friend of mine who works in the Commission. He said this will be laughed out of the room. Apparently the EU are absolutely furious about this. Ursula von der Leyen is apoplectic, is the word that he used. But
here's what's happened, Pete. I'm glad you brought the European Commission up, and indeed Ursula von der Leyen. What has happened in the light of this arrangement between France, or this alleged arrangement between France and Britain, is instantly Italy, Spain, Malta, Cyprus and Greece have written to the European Commission and say, wait a minute, what happens to these migrants when they come? Well, they're going to come our way. We want to know about this. So, in other words, the EU is going to nix this. They won't allow this to happen. So, but there are so many reasons. So, our immigration lawyers will kill it stone dead. The EU, the European Commission.
Our own courts won't strike some of this down.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Of course they will. Of course they will, because
you've not got over the initial problem of the Human Rights Act, of the European Convention on Human Rights. You've not got around it. They could still claim under any of this stuff. It is... I don't understand how anybody can think this is a solution to literally anything.
Joke. It's a joke. I mean, does he really think that we're going to buy this nonsense? I was thinking about him earlier. I want folks, give me a call, because I really think we're reaching sort of ground zero with this Prime Minister who stares us in the face and hits us with this avalanche of utter claptrap that has no chance whatsoever, just because he thinks he's going to get a cheap headline today. He didn't really.
No.
The Mail's headline was, "What a joke." And that's exactly what it is. This is not going to happen. But what I thought about Starmer, let me know what you think, folks. 03444991000. You know the way he lies to us and gaslights us, stares us in, this is our groundbreaking deal. So he lies to us, he gaslights. I think he lies and gaslights himself. I think he believes his own lies.
I think you're right. I think he's got to. Because otherwise, his brain might melt.
He's the right man for this, because, you know, he's a sort of weirdo robot type and gaslights himself.
Yes, I think he's starting to drink his own Kool-Aid to kind of justify his own ineptitude, if I'm being honest. Because if it was ever confronted to him, just how bad this is, I don't think he could handle it. Because he has taken a crisis and made it just 10 times worse. Do not get me wrong, I say this all the time. The Tories were appalling on this. But Labour on a whole other level of just awfulness, because they think this is helping. What is more concerning is there are smart people in the Labour Party. Where are you, and why aren't you saying this is nonsense? This is what annoys me the most about political parties at the moment. There are smart people who are saying or allowing dumb things to go out in their party's name, and they've got to stop.
Right, well, listen, we're going to go to break now, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about this deal. But in terms of, as I said in my monologue, pretty good news for Nigel Farage. A new poll has revealed that Reform UK supporters, or lots of them, would switch to Labour if Keir Starmer was able in some way to solve the migrant crisis. So that ain't going to happen, is it? We'll talk about that next. Stay tuned.
Some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
That's something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a Talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, does these people who lead us actually hate Britain? Yeah. Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I see that Oasis are playing their hometown of Manchester tonight. I'm just looking at some pictures. It's like a massive beanie hat.
Yes, definitely.
If you want to go and see Oasis, you know, you don't have to try to look like Liam Gallagher.
That's the one thing I've never got about Oasis fans. Yeah. They have to be like a carbon copy of them, and
I do believe that our Oasis competition now has a winner, but I better wait for that to be announced. Actually, it's me. I won. It's a totally fair competition. I've won. No, I didn't win. I wasn't allowed to enter. I tried because I knew the answer. No, seriously, it wasn't even that, was it? You just had to enter, I think. So congratulations to the winner. I'm sure that will be announced next week. Now let's go back to Turkey, Emmanuel Macron, and let's talk about this fabulous story that Brigitte Macron. This is my favourite story of the day, folks. It is this. Brigitte Macron has been has been at the centre of rumours and gossip and talk all around the world that she was born a bloke. They say she was born in 1953, and they say that she was actually born Jean-Michel Trogneau, which is the name of her brother, but they say that's actually her, that she was born Jean-Michel Trogneau, and, you know, had a sex change and all that. Anyway, two women in France who made a video mocking Madame Brigitte, he said Bardot then, hardly.
I was going to say.
Quite the opposite end of the scale,
just
really.
A tad.
Brigitte Macron, they're mocking her, saying, you're a bloke and all that. Anyway, so Brigitte gets very uppity about all this, you can imagine. She sued them. Huge, and won, and they were convicted of, I think, criminal libel, criminal defamation. They have appealed, and the Paris Appeal Court yesterday ruled that they were wrong to be convicted of this libel and this defamation, and they had every right to challenge what they described as a state secret cover-up. And their views on Brigitte's true gender were good faith and free speech. We hear that apparently were lawyers for the old biddy, Brigitte. I mean, he's 47, and she's 72. Kind of something a bit odd about that.
She's got 7 grandchildren.
It's quite. They all call her grandpa. Only
on a weekend.
They say, that's just a joke, folks. But seriously, these people have been cleared of calling Brigitte Macron a bloke. She's devastated. Brigitte is devastated and is going to take the case back to court. But as of now, in France, you can just go round saying Brigitte Macron is a bloke, is a man, was born a man. Now, whatever the truth of this, if Brigitte thinks that having sex with her 15-year-old pupil Emmanuel, when she was his married 40-year-old teacher was an okay thing to do, I think many people might disagree. Don't you think, Pete?
Oh, 100%. I've always found it weird.
Weirdos!
I've always found it weird. My friend called it delightfully French, and I thought that's the best way of defining it.
Horribly French.
Well,
horribly
good,
French.
But, you're right. But one thing I was rather delighted to when I was reading this just now was, isn't it nice to see free speech actually win something for a change? We've seen a lot of clamping down, a lot of kind of going after it, but, there's still hope, there's still a little light left that, you can still... call a woman a man if you want to. Yeah. But, it just staggers me, this story that, so much time is spent on it. But it is interesting because there's a lot of, when you kind of go through the conspiracy of it all, you're like, oh, well, actually, there's a lot of dots being dotted, a lot of I's being, all the rest of it. But
well, of course, Candace Owens in America, made a series, a big YouTube series about this, a smash hit. Again, lots of noises about, we're going to sue you, but they never did. And this test case, if you like, in France, kind of opens the floodgates. You can now say Brigitte Macron may well have been born a bloke because these people have won their appeal. And the Paris Court of Appeal has decided that they were perfectly within their rights to call the president's wife, the First Lady of France, a bloke, which is extraordinary. As I say, call me old-fashioned, call me a boring traditionalist, but, this backstory of these two, it gives me the damn creeps. Yeah. So he's a 15-year-old
Swap
pupil.
the genders and ask yourself, is it okay?
Well, think about it, though. Let's give old Mr. Macron, sorry, Brigitte, that he likes to be called, let's give him the... Oh my God. Let's give him the benefit. No, let's give her the benefit of the doubt and say she is a she. However, their backstory is still this. Yeah. She's a teacher at the school that he attended. She's 40 years old and she's married. He's a 15-year-old pupil and she starts bonking him. She starts having sex with him and his family, shocked and appalled by this, take him off to Paris to get him away from this old woman, if it is a woman. But love will out and they got back together and then they got married and now he's 47, she's 72. As I say, call me old-fashioned, but I say that is damn weird.
Yes, it is. And like I say, swap the genders and ask yourself, is it still okay? And the answer to that is no, it's not. If this was a man and a woman switched around situation, ironic for this story, but it's pretty hard to take the story seriously. But I do think you're right that there is a real oddness to this that we'd all just kind of breeze past because it is an older woman and younger man. If it was the other way round, a lot of people would be screaming at something a lot different than they are right now.
Right,
and I think that is a very interesting, a very telling situation that actually it's not about protecting people, it's about male and female dynamics.
I'm not taking a huge moralistic line on this. Whatever gets you through the night, that's my view. But I do think, questions should be asked about this. You're 15. Of course, it being France, that's the age of consent there, so it wasn't illegal. If she'd have done it in this country,
just because it's not illegal,
she'd be in jail.
Yeah. Yeah, just because it's illegal doesn't mean it's right.
No.
You know what I mean? There is a real question in our perspective. Yeah. I do think there is an interesting kind of dynamic between them. But my favourite thing is the way that she just bats him away every now and then. I mean, everyone has spats with their partners, but maybe not in front of the world's press.
Well, yeah, because she belted him in Hanoi, didn't she?
As they were getting off the plane, didn't she?
Well, she didn't belt him.
Yeah.
But she gave him the cold shoulder.
Clearly.
The word was she's very upset because her sister just died. So sympathy to her for that. But I say this is a weird relationship. Yeah. When we come back after this break, we're going to talk about this poll that I mentioned earlier that reveals that Reform UK supporters will all switch to Labour, or will all switch to Labour the moment Keir Starmer solves the migrant crisis. Good luck with that. We'll talk about that next. Stay tuned.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back now. We've dispatched with that story about Brigitte Macron being a bloke.
I still cannot believe I flew all the way back from Milan. All the way back from Milan for that.
This is my favourite story of the day, folks. I know, I'm shallow, light and trite really suits me. Let's get on to something that's slightly more serious. This is good news for Nigel Farage, I would suggest.
I don't think it is.
As I said before the break, Reform UK... If the basis of this poll, it is good news if Reform UK supporters would back Labour if Starmer solves the small boat crisis, because he's not going to do that.
But what it tells me is that...
Here we go, some more Tory claptrap.
It's not Tory claptrap.
Been another great week for your lot, hasn't it?
Yeah. My lot just has to survive. This is 2001 for my lot.
Beginning to get real.
But the reality is... What?
Sorry, I just got to... David Jones. Sorry, I've got a bit of a cough.
David Jones, the people who everybody had to Google
they're
who
big
was.
Tories,
And
they left.
Jay Berry, the guy who took away Tory memberships right to
forget
vote. Anyway, on this poll.
So you call it a good week for the Tories, do you?
Oh, no, I didn't, actually. I said it's a pretty much an abysmal week every week, as long as they survive. However, with this poll, what it tells
not for much
me...
longer. Anyway.
What it actually shows is that the vote for reform is based on one single issue. It's not based on anything else. If they can fix just one issue, that support disappears. That is not broad appeal. That is not broad support across a voter base that you're going to need to propel yourself into number 10. If the voter base, over 40%, is willing to jump over one issue, Reform have a bigger problem there. And I've been banging on about it for a long time, and it might be boring, but, you know...
Sorry, have you finished yet? Sorry.
No, I could keep going for 3 hours on this stuff, but
yeah. Sorry, folks. I hope you didn't fall asleep as well. That was Pete, hanging on to the coattail or the dregs of the Tory party. Good luck with that.
I crucified them
last week. But anyway, the chances of two-tier even coming close to a solution, as I've written here, are somewhere between no hope and Bob Hope. I mean, I do take your point about the migrant crisis and it being sort of Reform's big issue, their big territory, and they need to widen their remit. I agree with that. But on the basis...
the point is,
so these Labour supporters, though, rather Reform supporters, are never going to go to Labour because Keir Starmer is never going to solve the migrant crisis, as we learned from the one-in, one-out deal.
If you look at voter migration, though, more Labour voters are actually going to other progressive parties than they are going to...
What are the other progressive parties?
So the Green or the Lib Dems. In terms of membership support, is actually surging that way.
I don't think we should
rather than it's going the other way.
Why are they progressive? Why don't we call them remedial?
Trust me.
Remedial parties. They're not progressive. Why are they progressive?
It's literally what they're called. It's not my terminology. It's not my terminology.
Yeah, well, don't use that terminology. You like King Charles and Starmer calling illegal migration irregular migration.
No, that one I don't do. But this in terms...
Stop calling those half-wits from the Lib Dems and the Greens progressive.
Well, that is where the trend is going, is that basically if the Labour Party can hook back in on that issue and make any type of turnaround on the migrant crisis, and they can actually vote and point to something that they've done, it shows that support for reform is not as strong as people think it is. It might be there now.
Whereas the support for the Tory party has never been more strong.
It might not be all over the place, but that does not deflect from the fact that the support for reform is not as strong as people think it is. We're still 4 years away from a general election, no matter what people say, and trust me, that terrifies me more than most other people. But I'll tell you now, Reform still have a lot of work to do. They might be cruising high, they might be winning right now. I take nothing away from them for that. But in terms of they want to really win, and I mean get into power win, that is what they've got to fix. That is what everybody in Westminster is saying. They've got to hook in more. Get something stronger than the boats. NHS, the economy is going to be the bigger issue of the election.
The economy, okay, all right,
It will.
It's the economy stupid.
Yeah, well, essentially it is.
Yeah. But that's what you politicos think, isn't it?
Yeah.
People don't think like that.
Well,
they don't think like that.
Well, no, but
you
people
do. They don't.
People think about how much money they got.
It's got to be serious. It's got to talk about the economy, cost of living.
But what you do is you talk about it in terms of how much money have you got.
what wins the next election. I'll tell you that.
Because it's how much money have you got in
your
the
dreams?
end.
In your dreams.
It will. It always is. The economy is always number one. The immigration might be second, NHS third. Always is that kind of thing. But the economy will always be the number one factor.
And you will never ever be budged from that position, will you?
Not on that one.
Because elections are won from the centre, right?
Oh, absolutely
not.
Never,
one of those old cliches.
No, I've never believed that.
Honestly, yeah. Oh,
never,
good,
I've
good.
never believed
well, good for you. Good for you on that one. Because that is a load of crap.
That is, yeah, the mythical centre. It's a myth for a reason.
Right, we've reached the point of agreement there.
Move on.
Let me ask you on that rare moment of harmony. let me ask you again. You missed most of this because you were swanning around in Milan.
I was, yes.
Damn you. We sort of dined out on this channel, me and Mike in particular, for the last few days on while this grotesque, obscene extravagance of this pointless 3-day state visit by Monsieur Macron and
it's like, I believe, 5 million quid.
But by Monsieur Macron and his husband. Sorry, his wife.
Every time.
We're going to have some fun with this. No, so Monsieur Macron and the first lady of France. In the middle of this, so there's this £300,000 disgusting banquet at Windsor Castle. The King stands up and makes this sort of typically anodyne speech. And as I say, as I have stated all the time, I don't want to be too hard on the King because in a state visit, they're just the puppet of the government. The government gives him the speech. He has to do what he's told. But in the middle of this speech, he starts talking about irregular migration. And it was clearly the mission of this state visit because apart from the King saying it, Starmer said it about 5 times, Macron said it about 6 times. Clearly, this is the Foreign Office saying we've got to get the people calling illegal migration irregular migration. And I got bad news for you, you FO people. It ain't gonna happen. And when I say FO, I mean it in every sense of the initial, seriously.
No, you bang on here, and they've all been trying to change the language on this issue time and time and time again. It is rather boring, really, but it is, from their perspective, it does normally work. In other words,
it ain't gonna work.
But on this one, I don't think it will, because you can physically see the boat coming. I am still waiting for the press blackout on this, where they will stop the cameras and they'll stop journalists heading down to film this stuff. I'm literally waiting for that to happen, because until that happens, people's perceptions of this won't change. Of saying, like, look, they're coming here illegally, and you can change all the laws you like. That image of people in
it's
these
against
dinghies.
the law.
Yeah,
it's
but
illegal.
It's the visual image
it's
that
not
makes
irregular. It's illegal.
But
this is a euphemism. They're trying to cast a nice light on a lawless issue. This is illegal migration, and the King said irregular. Starmer said it about 5 times. Macron kept saying it. I don't know what his husband said, but he might have said it as well. Sorry, his wife. But seriously, this kind of bid to brainwash the public with a new term. It's disgusting. Leave us. We'll make up our own minds. You will not change the language we use, because this irregular migration is classic Orwellian manipulation, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Also, you have to notice, so when this first came in, it was, I think, 2 recesses ago, and it was announced as irregular migration on the day of recess, just as everybody was basically going home for summer. That's when you know something major is happening, or whether they really want to shift things, because they announced it at that kind of time. And unfortunately, people are starting to fall into this. I've seen a lot of people start calling it irregular migration in terms of the charities sector, in terms of a lot of
because
lobbyist groups.
Because they're all liberal Guardian
and,
readers.
They're all pumping it out now in their terminology and all the rest of it. And you're right, it has to be remained illegal, because it is a crime. What they're doing is a crime, and they start doing this. There's no such thing as illegal people.
Irregular.
They start saying, well, we're criminalising people. No, I'm criminalising the act that they're doing, and we have to remain very staunch on that one.
It's like calling a bank robbery an irregular cash withdrawal. It
really is.
Folks, don't buy this. Don't fall for this. It's illegal migration.
And every time you see a politician tweet it or whatever, correct them.
Correct them
underneath.
By the way, there's one thing about this deal, this one in, one out joke.
I can't believe it.
Yeah, you put your migrant in,
I'm going to say the
your
hokey-cokey.
migrant out, you do the okey-cokey and you shake it all about. There's one thing I like about it, that it has enraged Care for Calais.
Oh, yes, anything that annoys them. It's like...
they call it a grubby deal, human trading.
Yeah, anything that annoys them, or like the green lot, it's always a vote winner in my
Care for
mind.
Calais. Why don't you all go to Calais if you care for it so much and just live there?
Yeah.
Just live there. You know, we don't want you. Honestly. Right, we're going to go to break now. When we come back, another story that is kind of delicious, really. Angela Rayner has been kicked out of Unite.
Wonderful.
Has been kicked out of Unite. You know, firebrand, left-wing unionist. Angela Rayner has been thrown out of the biggest union in the country because she's now a kind of fascist member of the government. We'll talk about that next. Stay tuned.
Breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
That's something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, do these people who lead us actually hate Britain? Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. A couple of texts pertaining to our previous conversations. Matt, Pete, says, Kev, you're right. No one cares about the economy. It's illegals. That's the big issue. Andy says, Pete Barnes, stop it. Labour will never produce. And in the interests of fairness, this is Tracy. Hi, Kev. I very much agree with Pete. People are only drawn to reform because they think they will solve the migrant crisis. I personally don't think Farage will solve it. I do think, you know, to be serious for a second, if reform did get in, I do think they'd solve the migrant crisis. And I'm not taking any position, but I think the doubters like yourself, it's like, well, what else is in your armoury? You know, what else? What are you going to do about the NHS? Fixing. What are you going to do about the economy and so on and so forth?
I just look at the mess that we've got in now, weren't put under any scrutiny and asked, well, what are you going to do? They got in. And then we sort of realised what they were going to do was terrible.
In fairness,
I don't think we can allow that to happen.
They're not getting in tomorrow, are they? So give it time. But let's talk about... This is a story, really. This is the crisis of Labour.
Yes.
After a year, they probably realised this earlier. So they came into power last July. How can we forget? And they're a bunch of ideologues. Oh, we've been waiting 14 years for this. We're socialists. We're going to bring about our left-wing ideology. We're going to bring about our lovely, communist policies, power to the people, money to the poor, soak the rich and all that. Now, after a year, as I say, they probably found this out earlier, their ideology, what they were dreaming of, has clashed with reality. You cannot be a ludicrous, sort of semi-communist socialist ideologue and run this country properly. That's why Keir Starmer, he'd love to stand up and say, everyone can come to this country. I want the migrant crisis to get worse. That's what he really thinks. But he realises he can't say that because the people would be furious. So you have to do what the people want. Now, here is the story of Angela Rayner, massive, great union firebrand, was a big... union representative in her day, and she's a member of Unite union. I say she's a member, biggest union in the country. They've just kicked her out. I mean, they've officially suspended her membership, but they've kicked her out because, as I say, in the real world, as she's the government, we've got this terrible bin strike going on in Birmingham. The government's prerogative is to try to get that solved. And as such, she and the rest of the cabinet have been urging striking bin workers to accept the deal offered by Birmingham City Council. Now, the bin workers, the members of the Unite Union, have dismissed this deal as insulting. And Unite is now fuming that Angela Rayner's backing for this deal is, and I quote, disgraceful. And they are also now saying that the Unite, they've got a conference going on in Brighton. Unite are now, they passed a motion saying it is time for Unite to examine its relationship with Labour. Now, Unite is just about the biggest donor.
42 million they've given them since 2010.
Yeah, they give them 1.2 million a year, and as you say, over the years, vast amounts of money. If Labour lose Unite's money, that will be significant.
Significant is an understatement. I mean, this has been teetering in the background for quite some time. Since Unite got taken over, and I apologise, I can't remember her name, by a real...
Sharon Graham.
Yeah, Sharon Graham. I met her one time. Terrifying. My God, this woman is a firebrand, but
you say that about all women, though, don't you?
Pretty much. And look at me now. But I will say... I can't believe I just said that. But I will say that...
have you ever met Brigitte Macron? You'd be all right with her.
Only
She's
in
a
the
bloke.
No, that's true. But... Good Lord, I would never let that go away. But what I'll say that she's a firebrand, but she's an operator, and she's very, very good. What's really important at this is that she was Unite... Angela Rayner was Unite's, firebrand. She was their girl, basically. They didn't back the Labour Party financially in the last general election, but they gave her £10,000 for her election bid. You know, they wanted her for quite some time. Their pulling back from her is very, very significant. But even if Unite threatened just to pull back a little bit of money, this sends the Labour machine into complete chaos because they are reliant on this money. I've long argued that the relationship between the Labour Party and the unions cannot be sustainable if any longer because of the nature of
this. Like I say,
all
Pete,
of this stuff, because it's just absurd to me.
Well, it's like I say, Pete. This is the responsibilities of government are not commensurate with being a sort of idealistic, ideologue, sixth form activist kind of, lefty. It just doesn't work.
How can you put the nation's finances first if you're also taking cues from the people on the other side of the table of your own party's finance. It doesn't make sense to me. And how everybody's just got along with it, thinking, well, yeah, that's just how it is not acceptable. But what I will say is, the funny thing is, though, Unite said that she was a member. The Labour Party have said that she wasn't a member. Now that it's gone to an executive committee, which says everything about a trade union, doesn't it? But, you know, even that they can't get right as to who is in their membership. But I tell you now, this bit about the money, if they suddenly wander over to Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana, start offering them a little bit of money, you know, good staunch trade unionists, they've got a real problem on their hands, the Labour Party.
Well, I agree. Now, Sharon Graham, you just mentioned, the boss of Unite, she said this in the light of kicking Rayner out and essentially declaring war on this Labour government. She said this: people up and down the country are asking whose side the Labour government are on, and coming up with the answer, not workers.
Yeah.
Now that is a parting of the ways.
That really, really is. And also
that would be a dagger through their heart.
Considering the thing that we've got going through Parliament at the moment, workers' rights bill.
Yeah.
How can they say that the main trade union of this country comes out and says that the Labour Party is not in favour of workers?
Yeah,
that
but
would be the end of them.
Doesn't matter whether they are or not. When the biggest union in the country says they're not, basically they're not.
I'm agreeing, and then the idea that they've got this bill coming forward that says that we're putting workers' rights first, and they're going, no, you're not.
Yeah.
It just ruins them. It absolutely ruins any credibility they've got. They are taking attacks on the left and on the right, and as we all know, you can't win a war on two fronts.
Yeah, exactly right. And interesting times as we go forward with that bin strike, with the various other problems that
Can you believe that's still
Labour
going on?
have got. You know, what we've got here. Let's have a look. This is from Ernie. He says, Kev, you're saying that Starmer will not stop the illegal migrants. He's got to. Or at the rate they're coming over in 4 years, that works out at over 1 million. I'm not sure about that. We haven't got enough schools. Well, you know, Ernie, you say he's got to. We all say that he's got to solve this, but he clearly is nowhere near solving this.
Because I think you're right. I don't think he believes in solving it. I think he really just wants to get up there and say this isn't a crisis, this is all perfectly fine.
Well,
I have 10 times more respect for people who say they want open borders than what the Labour Party is doing right now, because at least they're being honest. The Labour Party is standing in front of you saying we want to control this, and they don't.
You see, I sort of take your point, but I think what's happened is, you know, Starmer, what is the only driving force within that robotic man's soul? It's this: I want to be Prime Minister. I want to carry on being Prime Minister. And he's realised that just being performative about the migrant crisis is not enough. He's got to at least pretend that his heart is in trying to solve it. And by the way, I forgot to ask in all our conversations about one in, one out and all this nonsense, whatever happened to smash the gangs?
Oh yeah, that's, you know, well, that was all but admitted not to work, wasn't it?
Well, that is inherent in this new initiative, is an admission that smash the gangs hasn't worked. It's a year on and not a single gang has even been found, let alone smashed.
Yeah, despite the fact that everybody knows they're operating in what's called the new jungle in Calais. They're basically, you know, have their little stands set up. Go, come sign up here. You know, everybody knows how this is operating, but the French aren't doing anything, the Brits aren't doing anything, and everyone's pretending it's each other's fault. It's laughable, but yet again, it's 800 million quid we've given them, and we cannot continue like this. It physically can't, because we say this pretty much every week, but we are now getting to, like you said, we're getting to that point now where something is going to break in a really bad way, and I don't know what.
Well, the welfare crisis is going to bankrupt us, and of course the only because they completely failed on welfare. You know, welfare
cost us more money trying to save us money. Only the Labour Party.
Well,
they
were supposed to save $5 billion. That wasn't nearly enough. But we spend £300 billion a year on welfare. We're addicted to welfare, and because they failed to make any savings. In fact, after that debate last week, the bill went up by £100 million. because they haven't done that. There's only one way they can save Britain from bankruptcy, and that's you and me, folks, and Pete. We're all going to have to pay some more tax.
No more trips to Milan.
She's going to, no more trips to Milan for you, or maybe if I suggest you emigrate there, really. I'll come with you. No, seriously, we're going to get tax rises, folks. There's no two ways about it. I mean, old Rachel from accounts, old crybaby Rachel, she's now admitting it. So stand by. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Rakib Asen, so I will look forward to that. Stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. In about 30 minutes, we're going to be taking your calls. 03444991000. You know what we're talking about. I think the migrant crisis is probably top of our agenda. While I'm talking, actually, I've had a text from Steve in Brentwood. And Pete, I've been saying this all week. The essence of the migrant crisis is numerical. You know, that this country's got 70 million people in it. We are full. We are officially full. So we can't keep taking more and more people. So swap the migrant, one in, one out, doesn't solve the numerical problem. And Steve's asking, he's in Brentwood here, he says, love the programme, but just very confused about how this new one in, one out deal will work. So we send one illegal back to France and take one back from France. The net change is therefore zero. Well, Steve, you're confused about this deal. Well, join the damn club.
Yeah,
everybody is.
My advice is don't try to figure it out.
Yeah, honestly. But Steve, don't worry about it because it's never going to happen. Right, let's get back to business. And really pleased to say that for the next 30 minutes, we're going to be joined, well, we are now joined by social policy analyst and all-round excellent guest, Dr. Rakib Asen. Hello, Rakib.
Evening, Kevin. How are you?
I'm very, very good. Before we get to the topics that I want to discuss with you, what do you make of this bizarre one-in, one-out deal that we heard yesterday? It's funny, isn't it? You just burst out laughing. If you say it to anyone, they just burst out laughing. What on earth do you think it's all about?
Well, it's certainly not one in, one out in my book, but based on my understanding of it, I think what it looks like to me is some kind of deal where only a tiny fraction of small boat migrants would be returned to France.
Yeah.
I think that they're talking about some kind of quota which would be in the region of 50 migrants a week being potentially returned. So over the course of a year, that would be like 2,600 or so.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a sliver of the small boat migrants coming to the UK. So it's not one in, one out.
Yeah. But as you say, 50 a week. In the last 2 days, today and yesterday officially 573 came across. Today we think at least the same amount, so more than 1,000 in the last couple of days. Last week 2,599. So that's a year's worth, 2,600. So as you say, this isn't even going to touch the sides, is it? It's ridiculous. Just numerically, it's a joke. And as we keep saying, right. The essence, just saying to Pete here, the essence of the migrant crisis is numerical. We can't keep taking more and more foreigners into our already overcrowded island. How does swapping them one in, one out, how does that solve the numerical problem? It doesn't really, does it?
It absolutely doesn't. I think a big problem that we have is that the UK is hugely generous towards illegal migrants. That's the truth of it. We have a totally dysfunctional asylum system, which is being completely overburdened by the level of illegal migration on the English South Coast. And the line between genuine refugee and economic migrant has become increasingly blurred over time. I actually think we need to work towards having a much more streamlined asylum system, one where we prioritise particular groups which serve our diplomatic and security purposes. For example, providing asylum to those who may be intelligence assets, for example. So, and I think that in terms of the number, I don't know what number we would go for, but what's clear at the moment is that the number currently is far too high. And we're talking about the number of undocumented arrivals are a genuine threat to the country's national security and social cohesion. And I think that if we don't get a grip on the numbers, that is going to be a very serious problem, because many of these so-called asylum seekers, in my view, vast majority being illegal migrants, they're dispersed to some of the poorest parts of the country. The government justifies this on the grounds that housing costs are a lot lower there. But what you're doing there, you're intensifying the competition for public resources but by doing that. And I think that's a very serious problem from a social cohesion perspective.
Yeah, and to get back to what Keir Starmer and Macron say is the point of this deal, which is that it's a deterrent insofar as if migrants think there's a chance they'll be sent back to France, they won't risk coming over. Well, I think it was the Telegraph yesterday worked out, it was the Sun this morning, worked out that under this deal, 50 a week, you've got a 20 to 1 on chance of remaining in Britain. 20 to 1 on. The Telegraph yesterday worked out that the way it's going, it would take 3 months to send 1 day's worth of migrants back to France. The numbers are ridiculous. The whole concept is ridiculous. I mean, non-starter doesn't even begin to cover what this one in, one out deal is. Never going to happen. It cannot happen. But anyway, let's park that and stop laughing at this ridiculous deal. Let's talk about the rape crisis, so the rape gang crisis, the rape gang scandal. Now, here's the worrying thing. Nigel Farage has said that he fears, and I think he's not alone, that the migrant crisis is very much still going on. Now, last week we learned that in Manchester alone, they are investigating more than 1,000 new suspects based on the allegations of 713 new victims, young, vulnerable white girls. So this is extremely concerning. So what we're suggesting now is that this is not only still going on, it's going on at quite a grand scale, on a massive scale. And as I say, Nigel Farage has said that he fears not only is the rape gang scandal still happening, that it's getting worse, and that the cops are still not being vigilant enough about pursuing potential grooming gang cases. This is based on the story of one guy who kept going to the police because his daughter was being raped, or he said his daughter was being raped by, the usual gang, Muslim men of Pakistani heritage. And he kept going round to the flat, and at one point he tried to kick the door in. They arrested him for drunken disorderly. They now concede that arrest might have been unjustified. So, they're still as if they're being apologists for this horror that is still carrying on. I mean, it doesn't bear thinking about, does it, Rakib, that the rape gang scandal is still all around us and it's still happening?
No, absolutely. And I think that what I really take issue with is that we have certain politicians, they talk about grooming gang activity as if it's something of the past. This latest report focusing on Manchester, if you just look at the sheer scale of live investigations, the number of suspects and the number of victims and survivors involved, that tells you it's a very live issue at an industrial scale. And I think that Manchester, for me, is a grooming gang hotspot. And it is also the location where Operation Augusta was prematurely closed down by Greater Manchester Police with the support of Manchester City Council. And I think that particular case is something that needs to be vigorously scrutinised in a future national statutory inquiry into grooming gangs. But I think that what we need to understand here is that this is a problem which is nationwide. This is not happening in a select number of local areas, which is why Labour's initial plans to have this kind of 5 local inquiries, that's wholly insufficient. There's been work which suggests that we're talking about up to 50 locations. And we're talking about nationwide networks of grooming gang activity. So I think that it's very clear that this is an existing problem and it needs to be rooted out.
And there seems to be signs that the cops, the authorities, are still reluctant to, shall we say, take on the Muslim community in terms of these guys who are mostly, as I said, Muslim men of Pakistani heritage. That there is still a reticence by the authorities to get involved in that for fear of charges of Islamophobia or racism. So the old problem is still going on, and that is really, really worrying. And this week, Rod Liddell's got a brilliant piece in The Spectator this week, the new edition, pointing out, and this plays right into what we're talking about. It's really worrying. The BBC, quite rightly, covered quite extensively the 20th anniversary of 7/7. I read the piece that he was referring to. It's a massive piece on their website, an article, commemorating this. These terrible bombs, more than 50 people dead, more than 700 people badly injured, the tube trains, the bus, and these terrible explosions bringing terror to London, paragraph after paragraph after paragraph. Long, long piece. Never once in this piece did they use the word Muslim, Muslims, Islam, Islamic, nothing. As Rob pointed out, it was as if these bombs had made their own way down from Yorkshire and detonated themselves because that was their purpose in life. It's just bizarre, isn't it?
It's not just bizarre, it's hugely insulting, especially to the victims of the 7/7 London bombings. That this was the deadliest Islamist terrorist attack which has ever taken place on British soil. And I think that what I found really interesting is that I saw a piece in The Guardian which almost framed British victims as the real victims of 7/7, that they've been subjected to high levels of securitization, state authoritarianism. And I felt for me, okay, you can make those arguments, but they shouldn't be made on the 20-year anniversary of the 7/7 London bombings.
Yeah.
I think that's hugely disrespectful. And I think there are British Muslims who really need to park their politics of victimhood, especially on anniversaries such as that one.
Yeah, so the only point at which the BBC got round to sort of mentioning Muslims or the Islamic community was in a separate piece, which was, the angle was how the 7/7 bombings had been catastrophic and extremely traumatic for the Muslim community, who now felt less trustful of the British white community. It's extraordinary.
No, I think it's extraordinary framing, really, and I think it's an offensive framing, in my view. And listen, I think that when it comes to discrimination, intimidation, violence and harassment, especially in its targeted forms, that needs to be rooted out. And that includes those forms of violence and intimidation towards British Muslim communities. But British Muslim communities themselves, they have to be honest, and they have to address the problem of Islamist extremism within British Muslim communities. Islamist extremism is the principal terror threat in the UK, also higher than mainstream levels of anti-Semitism, and also problems such as honor-based violence towards women and girls within British Muslim communities. And I think the problem is, if you want other people to fight discrimination towards British Muslims, then British Muslims have to take a bit more accountability as well when it comes to forms of discrimination, intimidation and harassment which take place within its own communities.
Yeah, and you know, to feed into this syndrome we're talking about, somebody reminded me that back on 7/7, Ken Livingstone, for our sins, was still the Mayor of London, and after these bombings, he said it's very important that we don't blame anyone. Well, I'll tell you who I blamed, and I blame to this day. It's the Islamic extremists who detonated the bombs. It's very important that we don't blame anyone. What on earth is he talking about?
No, I have no idea what he's talking about. This was ideologically motivated terrorist attack by 4 Islamist terrorists. It should be very straightforward in terms of saying that. And I found a lot of what I saw recently, when it's the 20-year anniversary of the 7/7 London bombings, there's a lot of don't look back in anger. You know, it's just a lot of wishy-washy stuff. What I want to see really is us really doubling our efforts in terms of tackling Islamist extremism, which, as I've said, is the primary terror threat in the UK.
In the world, Rakib. In
the world, exactly. In the world. I mean, we're talking about the UK because ultimately our focus is the UK.
Yeah.
But on a global scale, it is the primary terror threat. And I think that what's really interesting, and I really want to make this point, Kevin, is that we have failed when it comes to tackling Islamist extremism, to the point that the UK is increasingly viewed as a liability by Muslim-majority countries, especially in the Middle East, to the point that we have the United Arab Emirates adding 8 UK-based institutions to its local terror list. That should be a major source of embarrassment.
It really should, and we've got to get real. We've got to confront the reality of this issue. It's important to point this out. It sounds like a cliche, but it is important to say, obviously, the vast majority of Muslims are decent, honourable people, just like everybody else, you know, trying to get by, trying to keep a roof over their heads, feed the kids, etc., etc. But there is this significant caucus, this significant proportion of Islamic extremists that are causing tremendous problems in our society, and our society won't confront it. We're still terrified to do so, and we've got to change that, haven't we?
No, absolutely. Listen, Kevin, I say, for me personally, Islam is a source of resilience, hope, optimism, and routine. But we can't ignore the fact that if we have a MI5 terror-related watch list where the vast majority of people on that watch list are jihadists. Now, in the region, various estimates, but many in the region of 40,000. That means 1 in 100 British Muslims are on the MI5's terror-related watch list. Can't ignore that. Can't ignore that as well. And then, of course, the vast majority of Muslims decent-minded,
of course.
family-oriented, just want to focus on their loved ones and work hard. But I think the point I'm making here is that a lot of British Muslim organisations, especially those which are covered by the mainstream media, they talk a great deal about Islamophobia.
Yeah.
They're talking great about discrimination being faced by British Muslims, but they're very reluctant to talk about Islamist extremism. And I think that's why many of these organisations, they might not like it, but they're not treated as good faith actors, because they talk a great deal about Islamophobia, but they're very unwilling to tackle the various problems within British Muslim communities, which continue to persist today.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, the don't look back in anger. That was actually after the Manchester Arena bombing, the Ariana Grande atrocity. And the people of Manchester, or a group of them, got together, lit candles and started singing Don't Look Back in Anger. And it was Manchester man Morrissey of the Smiths, formerly of the Smiths, who said, well, actually, do you mind if I do look back in anger?
No, I'm angry about it.
Yeah, we should be angry.
I'm angry. There's the Manchester Arena bombings. The youngest victim was Safi Rose Roussos. She's 8 years of age. I'm sad about that, but that angers me as well. And I think that the idea that people are not even allowed to express their frustrations and anger, and that they're treated as inadequate if they feel that way on the back of these lethal terrorist attacks, I think that needs to change.
Absolutely right. We need to confront the fact that the vast majority of terrorist atrocities in this country, and as you said, also around the world, are committed by Islamic extremists. And we've got to start saying that. Now, meanwhile, we've got to go to break in a second, Raki, but I want to get you on this. Meanwhile, Angela Rayner has her sort of Islamophobia working group going on, chaired by Dominic Greaves. I can't say worse than that. This is a rather secret setup, which is going to pass their definition to the government to sort of define how we proceed with Islamophobia. But what we're learning is, if you examine the details of what they're proposing, to turn round to actually say the majority of terrorist atrocities in this country are committed by Islamic extremists, that will be deemed to be against the law. You won't be able to say that. And what I want to, which is absurd, of course. So this is an assault on freedom of speech. And what worries me about this is, why are we just doing this for one religion? Why are we not doing sort of Christianophobia, Hinduophobia, Sikhophobia? Why just Islam? That's not right.
Well, listen, I think it just reinforces the view among some people that Islam is ultimately being ultimately subjected to preferential treatment in modern Britain. And Kevin, I've said this before, that we have some of the strongest anti-discrimination protections in the world on the grounds of race, ethnicity, and religion. We're a land of considerable religious freedoms. Now, I just think that there's so much focus on Islamophobia. I think that what happens here is you're going to get what I call the grievance Olympics. You're going to get interest groups from different religious communities looking for their own definition based on discrimination towards their own faith. It becomes a free-for-all. And by the way, I make this point also about anti-Semitism. Now, I've got a strong track record when it comes to doing research on anti-Semitism, especially within British Muslim communities. But I think that increasingly, I just think that there's this work, we need to work on this definition, we have to create these new definitions when it comes to this form of prejudice. And I just think that ultimately, we need to protect freedom of expression in the UK. That's a rich English tradition. It's a cornerstone of British liberal democracy. And I think for me, as I said before, we're a land of considerable religious freedoms, but I think we should also protect people's rights to criticise religious ideologies and the impact that orthodox religious doctrines may have on wider British society.
Absolutely. All religions we should be allowed to criticise, and if we feel like it, laugh at. And actually, I don't advise this. I wouldn't encourage it, but if we want to go out and burn the Quran or the Bible, I'm afraid in a free country you ought to be able to do it. The attacks on these freedoms of expression inherent in this Islamophobia campaign are really frightening, and I think we should resist it for all we're worth. Let's go to break now, Rakib. When we come back, we want to talk about another pressing problem. That's Sick Note Britain and also Benefits Britain. Let's chew the fat on those issues when we come back from this break. Stay where you are.
Some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
That's something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a talk exclusive we've been looking at. I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, do these people who lead us actually hate Britain? Yeah. Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. I'm still, of course, with political strategist Pete Barnes, but also with social policy analyst Dr. Rakib Ahsan. Rakib, I want to talk about, this is an issue, I think, of Britain. It surrounds Britain and the working culture. This used to be a hard-working country. Now it seems to be a country where everybody's trying to get off as much work as they can, not working. I think to an extent the COVID crisis, the so-called COVID crisis, and all the lockdowns recalibrated this nation's mindset when it comes to going to work. Now, on the front page of the Times today, I guess you could classify this under Sick Note Britain, GPs are to be ordered to stop issuing millions of sick notes and instead send people to job coaches or the gym. Last year, this is what it's based on. This is extraordinary. First of all, of course, it's another one of these euphemisms. You know, we were discussing earlier how King Charles and Keir Starmer and Macron, they like to talk about irregular migration as opposed to illegal migration. Well, in this field, we no longer call them sick notes, we call them fit notes. Yeah. They are notes from your doctor to get you off work, simple as that. Anyway, in 2015, doctors in this country issued 5.3 million fit notes. Last year, 11 million. And 93% of people were simply, without any reason, declared not fit for work. Now, I think this kind of sick note culture goes hand in hand with our welfare culture, you know, where we have millions and millions of people just claiming benefits and not going to work, sort of backed up by a kind of system that favours claiming benefits over going to work. So there's sick notes, benefits. This is bad. This is bad. We need to get people back to work in this country, don't we?
No, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think that worklessness is a very serious problem. And I think that when it comes to our welfare state and how the government spends money, I want to see less of it being spent on benefits and more on skills training, apprenticeships, how you can ultimately find ways to boost the skill set within the British workforce. I think that needs to be the focus. I think the problem is that, and Kevin, I'll make this point that I'm self-employed, so the idea that I can just try and get a sick note to get away from work and all the rest of it, don't even have that option because I work for myself independently. Yeah. So I think and I think this is a big problem as well, that I think over decades, mass immigration has been used to mask our worklessness culture. I think that's a very serious problem as well. And I think that, listen, I don't want to be in the business of saying that people are lazy, they're feckless and all the rest of it. But what you need a system which incentivizes people to search for work. And I think that's the key point. That's the big point. And I think what I want to see is that we have a system where we break the cycle of welfare dependency in many parts of the country, in those communities, and ultimately we focus on how we can get people in terms of developing those resilient mindsets that go hand in hand with having a thriving work and career.
And in terms of welfare, and indeed this bizarre Motability scheme where we keep giving people free cars for no apparent reason. It was revealed, by the way, this week, you know, this Motability scheme, which is originally was for people who are disabled and can't get around, to get cars to help them get around. I'm all in favour of that. But it's so out of control now that last year we gave away 589,000 cars. 1 in every 5 cars in brand new cars is sold to the Motability scheme. And figures emerged this week. You're going to love this. 20 free cars were given last year to people with constipation. Why? Well, you've got to get to the loo. And 40 were given to people with tennis elbow. But more worryingly, and this also feeds into the kind of people who are getting welfare and getting signed off work. More than 32,000 people got free cars on the PIP scheme. They say it's not really free because, you know, they take some of your benefit money to pay for the cars, but effectively these are free cars for claimants. More than 32,000 got free cars for depression or anxiety. You know, why do you need a free car from that? But loads and loads of people are getting signed off work for life because they're depressed or they've got anxiety problems. And a lot of these decisions are being made on the phone. People are getting signed off work for life because they phone someone up at the the Work and Pensions Department and say, "Oh, I'm really, really depressed." We've got to do something about this.
No, we have to. And listen, I sympathise with people who are going through a rough time, but the truth is that is part of life. You have very difficult periods in life. Now, of course, if people who are severely disabled and genuinely cannot work, then of course they should be supported by the welfare state. There's no doubt about that. But I think the problem is we're talking about lots of young people who should be in their mental and physical prime, and they're not behaving that way. Yeah. That's the truth of it. Yeah. And I think that what we need to have a very serious discussion. And I know that a lot of people will say that I come across as heartless, overly hard-headed, but I think that we need to restore that culture of resilience and determination. I think that's integral, because if you don't have that, you're not going to have much of a successful career. Yeah, that's the truth of it. You're not going to be able to participate in the labour market properly if you don't have the correct mentality to go with it.
And a good way of not being depressed or full of anxiety is to work hard. If you go to work and you work hard and you pay your own way, it's a really good way of staying mentally healthy, if you see what I mean. Do you think, Rakib, that we have I think we have a massive overdiagnosis problem. A story came out this week that quite a few local councils are facing bankruptcy because so many kids have been diagnosed with ADHD and they have to pay for their various requirements. Now, I suspect, again, I don't want to sound hard-hearted or anything like that, but I suspect that a lot of these kids are getting signed off with ADHD are what they would have called in my day when I was at school naughty kids, like I was, to be honest with you. Do you know what I mean? We are overdiagnoses leads to welfare, leads to mobility. The whole thing is a swirling mass of a mistake.
No, absolutely. And listen, if only some of the poorest countries of the world, the populations there, they had the luxury of this kind of overdiagnosis. Yeah. That's the truth of it. When you talked about mental health problems there, the truth is that those are people struggling every day just to try and get food on the table for their families. But the interesting thing is when I visited those countries, those are people that have some of the biggest smiles on their face as well, even though they're living under such difficult circumstances. Now, I know that Britain has got its fair share of problems, but I don't think many people, they don't really understand how good they have it in the UK in terms of the opportunities, freedoms, protections and rights they have. But the point is, those rights and protections, they're not there to be exploited. That is the whole point. And I think that unless we get to grips with this problem, especially in terms of trying to get young people back into work, and that we actually confront this almost fetishization of mental health problems as well, almost their glamorization, then we're not going to make much headway in terms of tackling this culture of worklessness.
Absolutely, glamorization is the right word. And by the way, we're not trying to undermine or diminish the importance or the seriousness of mental health issues. A lot of people do suffer. But let's face it, a lot of people are swinging their lead here. They're making all this stuff up and we are indulging them. That's the problem. 11 million fit notes. Somebody rang, I think it was Mike Graham's show this morning, to say that she went in and she ripped to see her doctor because she was feeling very, very sick, and I'm not sure what was wrong with her, but she basically wanted a week off. And the doctor said, well, how about 2 weeks? And she said, oh, okay. And he said, well, I'll tell you what. I mean, seriously, he said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 6 weeks if you like. This has got to stop, hasn't it?
It's mollycoddling. Yeah. That's all it is. And I think that what you have there is we have a system which encourages that worklessness. That's the truth.
Yes, it does, Rakib.
How easily it is to obtain sick notes, the degree to which people can claim that they have mental health problems. I think that in that sense, our culture has gone in the wrong direction, in my opinion. And I think we need to work towards reversing it.
Yeah, we've got a lot of work to do, but I couldn't agree with you more. Rakib, how fantastic to have you on this Friday night show. Thank you very much, and I want to wish you a very, very happy weekend. Great guy.
Oh, brilliant. When he runs for Parliament, I'll work for him for free.
Yeah, but let's have
Honestly,
Rakib as a president.
No, I think he'd be brilliant. He's exactly the kind of voice we need. But there is one thing that you didn't quite mention. We have a growing unemployment problem, which is on the rise for the first time. It's the largest it's ever been since COVID.
Is it?
1.6 million are now unemployed.
So that's going up.
That's going up. Alongside with this going up is a big problem, because what you're doing, and I thought you did really well put the pair of you, was actually you're diluting the word disabled. It doesn't mean what it used to mean. And this is the point, we're not having a go at people who genuinely need it. We're saying that the system can't support such a broad definition. If this is going up, and you've got the claimants going up, economically inactivity is going up, it's all going to come to a moment where nobody can pay for anything anymore.
Oh yeah, vast swathes of the country not working. You are never going to get the economy going. I'll tell you that.
Growth is never going to happen.
Exactly right. We better go to break. We'll be back in a minute.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Now, in about 20 minutes, should have done this earlier, but this will be exciting for you. It's my new show. It's not my new show. It's a new episode of my extremely long-running and incredibly successful, popular show, What Just Happened. What Just Happened? That starts at 9 o'clock, but here's a little taster.
Was just very lucky to have literally lucked out and be set up through a mutual friend.
Well, she had a date with Piers Morgan, didn't she?
She did.
Well, lucky you, Piers. You dodged a bad bullet there, I'll tell you.
And footballer Andy Cole, I heard, but he turned her down. She got rejected quite a few times.
Footballer Andy Cole?
Yeah. That's right.
That is true.
Yeah, we're talking about Meghan there, of course. Anyway, what else? Who else? Yeah, that's in about 20 minutes, so I hope you enjoy that. So that is, you can watch that from 9 o'clock until 10 o'clock. Or you can listen to it. It's very radio friendly, and if you miss it in a few minutes, you can watch it tomorrow on YouTube as of about 9:30 a.m. and then you can pick and choose whenever you want to watch it. It'll be on there forevermore, so I hope you enjoy that. Right, let's get to the phones and let's get to the WhatsApp voice notes. First of all, here's Liam on the migrants.
Hello Kev, it's Liam in Folkestone, your eyes and ears down here for all things migrant related. Please spare a thought for every single one of us that at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, the air sea rescue helicopter goes out, and that's a loud beast. And we have to witness it just with our ears. Not even just the numbers that come across, right? We are woken up. Our quality of life is rubbish. Stop the boats. I've been doing it for 5 years, Kev, and I've had enough.
That's Liam. He lives in Folkestone, right on the front line, and he quite often tells me, you know, about 8 in the morning. He said, I reckon there's going to be 500 today. And as he said, he estimates this on what he hears in the air, what he hears. So yes, it's all going on if you live on the south coast. Shall we take a phone call?
I've just looked it up very quickly. Yeah, over a year, that service cost the taxpayer £5 million.
Hell in a handcart, mate. Hell in a handcart. Let's talk to the lady who's on Talk more than all the presenters. She is, of course, the fabulous Georgina in London. Hi, Georgina.
Good evening, my darling. It's great to talk to you, and hello to your lovely guest. I've spoken
Hi,
to
Georgina.
him
Barnes, yep.
Hi. Hello. Well, I want to address the elephant in the room, and it's an elephant that none of the Labour Party seem to want to address, and that's fundamental Islamists. Yeah. You know, these people do not want to integrate with any other culture. It's against the religion. They're not here to take part, my darling. They are here to take over.
Yes.
And the common denominator with the majority of terror acts around the globe are linked in one way or another to Islamic terrorism or fundamentalism. And until this government actually admits to themselves that we have a serious problem and stop sticking their heads in the sand with this fanatical Islamists in the UK, we are not going to progress any further forward. We will regress more and more, and we cannot allow that to happen. The very fact, Kevin, that we are still allowing hundreds of unvetted economic, might I say, migrants into our country every day, and we already have experience of terrorism due to the illegal migration problem, that's telling you that they don't want to address this problem. And anyone who stands up to these people or speaks out are branded either
racist, Islamophobic,
bigoted, or far right. That isn't even a word, Kevin. Islamophobic. It's not even a word.
It is now.
Yeah, that's right. But sorry, Georgie, can I just make a really... You've really hit the nail on the head here for me, because it is all about three phrases. Not all Muslims, all other forms of hate, and it's not about Islam. We have been conditioned to say that again and again and again, and we are ignoring the primary driver of this crisis. It is that religion. I hate to say that, but we've been conditioned not to talk about it.
It's extremists within that.
Well, it's true, but again, we qualify it again and again and again. We've got to start holding it up. Well, it's not exactly one religion running around doing things.
Yeah, but I think it's only fair to do that. But it's like most groups. You know, the noisiest minority are the ones that dictate the narrative, and that's the problem. There is quite a sizable number of extremists within our Muslim community that want to take over, that want Sharia law. You have to say that most of them...
May I say something?
Yes,
May I say something?
Of course.
When you look at Dubai, you look at Abu Dhabi, and I spend a lot of my time there. Abu Dhabi and Dubai will not have these people in their country. And when they're not taking Muslims into a Muslim country, you know there's a problem.
Yeah, there certainly is. There really is. Georgina, could talk to you all night, of course, but I've got other calls. But it's a pleasure to talk to you, as always. Have a great weekend. Thank you very much, Georgina in London. Let's go to break. Some more calls and voice notes when we come back. Stick around.
Some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
Something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a talk exclusive we've been looking at. I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, do these people who lead us actually hate Britain? Yeah. Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Quick text that I like from Gary. Kevin, don't you just love the way that Starmer reassures us that one person coming in legally under this one-in, one-out migrant deal will be subject to stringent security checks, unlike the 800-plus men of fighting age who have rocked up on dinghies over the last 2 days. It'd be lucky if it was 800, but more like 1,000, about whom we know nothing, but who will be delivering pizzas and burgers to people's homes by tea time. That's about the size of it. Mark in Carlisle, we're going to come to you in a second, but first, Anna, voice note on migration.
Good evening, gentlemen. Anna, sorry. Your esteemed guest, Kev, has just said something's going to break in a very bad way. I don't know what. Guys, I think we all know what's going to break in a bad way. It's going to be the temper of the indigenous population. We do not want these people. We do not want them in our country, and there is a point of tolerance which I'd say was standing on the edge. Cheers, guys.
I think Anna's right. I think there is this sense that we are near to breaking point and we are in the hands of an incompetent government. Everything's going wrong, and as Anna suggests, something's got to give. Let's talk to Mark in Carlisle. Hi, Mark.
Benefits Britain, Kevin. It's not the claimant's fault. Ever since the Conservatives looked as if they were coming to power in 2009, they came to power in 2010. Yeah. All the liberal, lefty sort of Labour officers housing people in the councils and these housing associations and the accommodation centres were fighting against all the cuts and austerity with helping the claimants claim. And the buzzword then was, if you're depressed, if you have anxiety, we'll help you more, and you'll qualify for housing easier. So the claimants were encouraged to do it since 2010.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, I get that. You know, it's quite often wily people cashing in on an absurdly over-generous benefit system. But you know, that doesn't exonerate them. It might be better if they got off their asses and went to work, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but they were encouraged to do it by the officers in there. We went undercover. I'm a filmmaker in place, and you were rounded up, and this is right. Who qualifies for housing? Just say you're depressed. This was actually
you get these guidebooks, don't you, on how to game the system.
Yeah, anyways, changing the subject a minute, I'm tempted to have another bet, our Cressida Dick champagne bet.
All right, yeah, go on. Yeah, good. Yeah, I won. So what's your bet, Mark? Because last time I won, didn't I? And I got a magnum of champagne from Mark. What's your question? What are we going to? What are you going to bet me this time?
You'll say he won't make the next election, and I'm supposed to say yes, he will. But I might as well give it a shot.
This line is terrible. Say that again, Mark.
Basically, you're saying that he won't make the next election.
Mark, we're going to have to get you back. Get Mark back, because last time we had a bet, I won a magnum of champagne, so I want to get him back. In the meantime, let's listen to Ian on the migration deal.
Kevin, it's Ian from East Grinstead. This Starmer deal, all it's going to do is infuriate the British public. The politicians of both blue and red are driving the country towards, I believe, civil unrest because they are not stopping what is a major concern to the majority of the population and the security of the UK as a whole. They are a complete disgrace, and if civil unrest does happen, it's on their shoulders.
Yeah, I mean, there's more and more talk of this, and it's not necessarily from sensationalists.
No, it's not. No,
you know, there's a feeling.
You can feel it everywhere you go. Just a palpable anger.
So the social fabric seems to be, you know, on the brink. doesn't it? People are getting furious.
It's the gaslighting. It's not the lying. It's the gas. But it's
same thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
really?
but I think it's you're not seeing what you're seeing. I think it infuriates people to another level because you're like, I can see it.
It infuriates me.
Yeah, and I think the government are playing with fire here, and I think we're all about to get burned.
I agree with you. Yeah, good point. Mark, are you back? Is this a better line?
Mark, can you hear
me? That's it. Right, what were you saying? Because I want to take a bet with you.
Well, Dick, you won the bet when you said she won't make it, and I said yes, she will go to the end of the term.
Yeah, that's right.
To do a Keir Starmer one, but you're going to say he won't be Labour leader at the next election. So I'm stuck with, he will, but I don't believe it. So I might as well just give you the champagne and give up.
I don't know whether we can do a bet on that, because my kind of feeling is that Labour might say, man, this guy, he's going to lose us the next election. But Labour's machinery makes it very difficult, much more difficult to dump their leaders than the Tories, who, of course, do it every 3 weeks.
Yeah, well, we call it sport.
Yeah. It's your hobby,
yeah, pretty much. It's a national pastime.
So I'm not going to take that bet, Mark, because I don't think it'd be fair on either of us.
Let me suggest one then.
Go on, then.
All right, if Reform win the next election, I will deliver to your offices a sack barrel-sized Magnum.
All right, I'll take that bet, and I'll take that bet, and if they don't, I'll owe you a Magnum of champagne. How's that?
Really?
Yeah. Well, it's only fair. It's not very fair that only I can win, and if I lose, you don't get anything. So we've got a bottle of champagne. I'm not convinced Reform will win the next election, but I'll take the bet for fun. So if Reform win the next election, you owe me a Magnum of champagne, and if they don't, I owe you a Magnum of champagne. Right? Deal?
It's a bet.
All right, mate. Good to get that one. I've written it down, so don't forget. All right, Mark. Well, I'll talk to you before then anyway. I hope I do anyway. Thanks, mate. Take care. Let's quickly, I think we've got time. Let's go to Steve in London. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Kevin. Good evening, and good evening to Pete.
Good evening.
What would you like to say, mate?
It's just regarding the migrant crisis and the deal that
the deal.
I was going to say.
Yeah, the deal.
Supposedly cut with Macron.
It's a good deal, isn't it?
Well, I think we all know it's not worth the paper it's written on. It's never going to get off the ground. He won't get it past his MPs in Parliament here. Macron's a dead duck in the French Parliament. He's not going to get it through there. And the EU will just kick it into the long grass. So, and all her.
I think that should. I think I'm not sure whether it'll sort of maybe even go to a vote in Parliament. That isn't going to be the problem. The problem will be immigration lawyers who'll be all over it. Will kick it into the long grass very, very quickly. There are so many loose ends, inexplicable loose ends with this. How do they choose the 1 in 17? What happens when that migrant gets to France? What happens to them then? Starmer's starting to say, Steve, and this is extraordinary, I don't know if you noticed this, it was like this morning apparently, he's starting to say, because people say, well, these 17 migrants, how are you going to choose them? He said, well, we'll detain every migrant that comes here. And you sort of think, hallelujah, but where are you going to put them?
Yeah, there's definitely that. And also, he has a very strong confidence on how we vet people.
Yeah,
and I'm not being funny. Nobody has any faith in that at all, considering the fact you couldn't count how many of them there were.
Yeah.
I mean, his entire premise of this is based on the strong vetting thing. It's just nonsense.
Yeah, but that's coming from France, Steve. What Macron is saying, the people we send to Britain, they'll be people with a legitimate claim to come here. They've got relatives, family here or whatever, and they will be fully security vetted, which begs the question, what about the migrant that we're sending back to France, because we don't vet our migrants at all. We've got probably the best part of 100,000 migrants here that we know nothing about.
But I don't think it'll make any difference, because all that's going to happen is his mate Herman's going to say to him, it's against international law.
Yeah, that's interesting. Although
he will drop it quicker than he drops a good idea. Well, he'll just get rid of it.
Yeah, I mean, I just think the practicalities of it are a joke. And when he was pressed on, well, how are you going to pick this 1 in 17? He said, oh, I'm not going to go into that now. And what he meant by that was, I have no idea. Yeah. He doesn't know how they're going to pick the 1 in 17, and when they do pick the 1 in 17, that person, that bloke, is almost certainly going to be a bloke. lawyer, their immigration lawyer, will be all over it, and they will not be sent to France. I'll tell you something, Steve, you're right about one thing. This scheme is never going to get off the ground. I bet you we never, ever send a single migrant back to France under this absurd swap-a-foreigner deal.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. It really is. Don't you think, Steve?
Well, what I think we need to do is we need to start thinking outside the box. Every time we get a new Prime Minister or we get a new government in place, they're always going to make the tough decisions.
Yeah.
We're picking on the low-hanging fruit like the old age pensioners,
yes,
the farmers,
you're right.
and the people that work here is not making tough decisions. A tough decision would be, let's cancel foreign aid for the term of one parliament.
Yep.
Let's get rid of foreign investment and stop Miliband spending billions to Africa for car